was your flight?
Long, very long, but I'm here. So, and the middle seat wasn't taken, so I had a little bit of extra room. So, hi everybody, I'm from Texas, and I'm here to talk about investment optimization modeling. Can you guys hear me well enough? Can I put the microphone down? Everything good? Is that okay? Okay. All right. You're going to take it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
I wanted to ask, maybe you can tell.
Oh, go for it.
No. You tell the story, like first from where you are coming.
Because, yeah, sure.
Because you flew, like,
yes,
from there.
So
and how we met, because I remember we were like trying to meet like for 1 year or so, and we couldn't do it.
Oh, yes. So I have a friend that has relocated here to Frankfurt, and so I'm here visiting my friend, and Elder and I, we've been chatting back and forth, and Martin as well, and I actually did brunch with Martin, I guess about a month and a half ago.
He didn't tell me that.
Oh, he didn't?
No.
Oh, that's very odd. Okay, well, it was a great brunch. I really liked him, and I really like the data science community that's going on here. And so we've been trying to kind of figure out a schedule for when I've been able to visit and a time for me to come talk. And today is the day. So it worked out pretty well. I'm here to talk about investment optimization modeling, but let me give you a little background on who I am. So my name is Natalie Kortum. I live in the US. And I have been involved in marketing analytics for 18 years now. I've ventured into a couple other areas around analytics and data science, but I keep coming back to marketing. It's the area I know really well. I've been doing a lot recently around marketing attribution or omni-channel, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I've really specialized, if there's anything I've specialized in, I've touched just about everything that there is to touch in marketing analytics, pricing, customer segmentation, customer lifetime value, things along those lines. But if I've specialized in anything, it's been on a very strategic level, and it's been kind of the ROI or return on investment type of questions. So this is a little bit about who I am. I'm going to give you a picture of all the brands I've worked with. So this gives you a view of all the different brands that I've delivered on in my career. I've worked at Dell and Humana and IBM, which is why those are a little bit larger. But as you can see, I've worked with a lot of different brands, some in healthcare, some in entertainment. I've worked with some nonprofits. But B2B, business to business, and business to consumer. So I've seen quite a wide range of things. So that's a little bit of who I am. So let's get down and talk about, yeah, go ahead, please.
What kind of analytics will be needed by Playboy?
What kind of analytics will be needed? Nobody's asked me that, and I didn't expect that, yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting, but I should have a beer before we talk about it. No, actually, it was really fascinating work that Playboy does. No video. But yes, if you'd like to hear more about it. But the guy I was seeing at the time always wanted me to bring my work home, so I will say that. But no. A whole separate. Maybe. So, but no. But there was a lot of interesting things going on. So, okay. So let's talk about investment optimization. Enough about Playboy. So. Investment optimization modeling. So start with the answer first. So what really was the purpose behind this? And I totally agree that you really have to start with the business case. But the purpose was to understand what investments impact the company's overall revenue in both the short term and the long term. So the big question was trying to understand the different areas where a company can invest and understanding what kind of returns that's going to give for them in the next year from a revenue perspective. We're, in the goals that I've looked at with investment optimization modeling, we are really looking at the company holistically, and we're looking at things around considering leads of investments that are synergistic. So basically, if you invest in marketing and you invest in sales, 1 + 1 isn't 2, it could be more. So trying to understand that type of return on investment. And really, honestly, the goal of investment optimization modeling is to provide the CFO or the executive leadership with some sort of tool so that they can determine where to make that investment for the next year. And we'll talk just a little bit about this. So this is kind of a case that I've done. I understand most people here are in the finance area rather than the marketing area in Frankfurt, right? Can I just see a kind of a raise of hands? How many people kind of work in finance? Yeah? And how many people work in marketing? Okay, so there are a few. So okay, cool. But I did kind of hit the audience by talking about the financing. So let's dive into this. Let's pretend you are a CFO and you have some great news. Your revenue year over year is up by 20%, right? So everybody's celebrating, everybody's happy, they're gonna get their bonuses, all that kind of stuff. And you're now planning what you're gonna do for the next year, right? So you're basically deciding, okay, what's everybody's budget gonna be, okay? So the sales guys come in and they say, hey, you invested in us, you gave us a 15% bump, and look, we generated some returns for you. And they bring in their fancy model and they've got all this worked out, that their sales investment helped generate that 20% increase in revenue year over year, and they want more money. And so anybody have any idea what you're thinking? You're thinking, yay, okay, the models look good. Maybe I should give the sales guys some more money. Does anybody know what happens next for that poor CFO? Thank you. Yes. So all of a sudden, all the other groups want to come in, and marketing wants to talk to you, product wants to talk to you, support wants to talk to you. And these are the changes. I made some dummy numbers up here because none of the companies would let me share with you guys the real numbers. But you can see that marketing had an increase in dollars. So they're kind of sharing their success story and trying to take credit for that 20% year over year revenue growth. But your product and support guys are doom and gloom when they come in and talk to you, right? Listen, we sold more. Support's telling you, like, there's no way I can do it with the budget cuts you gave me last year. I really need you to bring me back up and even give me more. And so what do you do as you're the finance guy, right? So you start thinking about that sales model you've got that shows you the different investments and the impact on revenue. And you start thinking about all the other impacts that could be going on for this revenue question, right? It's not just sales. There's also marketing. There's the ship to commit accuracy. There's product quality. There's even things that you don't control. What's your competitive market doing? What's the economy going to be like? So as you're starting to do this analysis, I find that a lot of the companies that are starting to get into data science are still really siloed. They're still looking at what is the sales group impact on revenue. They're not necessarily looking at it from that whole strategic perspective. And that can be very problematic. And we have tools, we have models out there to be able to answer these questions, right? So all of a sudden your finance guy has all these different very siloed models, your CFO, and he's having to go off of tribal knowledge. And there's no model to kind of answer that question for him. So I'm not going to talk necessarily too much about the modeling itself, but kind of talk a little bit about the outputs from the investment optimization model and what those might look like, so that you can kind of see. One of the things that you can do with this investment optimization modeling is really attribute where the revenue came from over the past year. So you can look at all the different impacts that these different areas had and how they're impacting the revenue at the end of the year. And then that helps isolate that question of, okay, we got a 20% bump in revenue, but what really caused it? And what really provided that investment? Then, of course, the big question for the CFO is the marginal ROI and trying to understand the impact that you're going to have by adding an additional, in this example, 100K, let's say, to invest. You have an extra 100K to invest. Where should you put it? Or maybe where should you take money from to do that investment? And so you can actually generate returns and kind of show what those ROIs are going to be. And for those of you who haven't just completed your business class on this, the SCurves for marginal ROIs, we're really not looking at a total ROI. We want to look at where you are right now and kind of tweaking that plan. And so you can come out with the SCurves, and that will help you look at where your current level is and then forecast from there. The big question that happens when you start talking investment optimization modeling, though, is not just what the marginal ROI is, but the executives always want to know, when am I going to get that impact? And so we were actually able to do this from an in-quarter, in-year, and 12 to 18 months forecast. So look at that total ROI perspective. So if you can imagine that CFO thinking about when their investment will actually deliver results. And this is dummy data, but it agrees pretty closely with the models that I've done, where you can see that product doesn't really have a return in quarter, but it does have a pretty significant return 12 to 18 months out. And then if you look at pricing as an example, if you start offering a lot of promotions and do investments in pricing, you may see an in-quarter lift, but that may hurt your demand for the rest of the year as people kind of buy up because you've done things from a promotional perspective. And then in the longer term, it may have kind of a negative impact on your brand image because you're promoting so much. But you can kind of get an idea from those different returns. So that's kind of investment optimization modeling from a holistic perspective. Are there any questions about that? Any? Yeah, please, go ahead.
Can you model these as independent?
Can you model these independent?
Yes, I mean, when you decide to make an investment in marketing, is that going to be independent anything else, or will it impact on other branches of your business?
Absolutely. So what I find is a lot of people are doing this. So the sales guys are already doing their type of modeling that they've got going on and modeling that against revenue. And what I think the investment optimization, in my experience when I've used this investment optimization modeling, what it really does is it removes that silo. And it removes looking at just the sales team and the sales team impact on revenue, or just the marketing team and the marketing team's impact on revenue, and looks at it from a combination of factors. So I guess what I would say is, going back to the point that we heard earlier, listening to the business case and what's going on. We don't, that poor CFO is getting direction. Everybody says, invest in me. And that poor CFO doesn't really have a perspective or any sort of data that can give them some sort of reason to choose one place to invest over the other, and they're having to go with a gut check. When you do a modeling that's more holistic and considers all of those different factors into it, it's not perfect, right? No modeling is going to be perfect. You've got to include some expert knowledge in it, but it does give them something to base off of. Did that answer the question?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Are there any other questions about it? Yeah, go ahead.
What kind of a model do you use to optimize?
I've done different ones. So I have done a Bayesian Networks model, which was really hard to explain afterwards when you're talking to the executive. But this is not necessarily dependent on one specific modeling approach, since we're talking a little bit more of the use case. But you're going to need to do something multivariate for sure. So,
Can I ask also?
yeah, go ahead.
Related to that,
Yeah.
this is a typical problem, for the companies. That
Yeah.
They want to have something innovative. They have a kind of innovation lab and a new team of data scientists, but it's really to change this mindset, of the CEOs, people on the C-level to change this mindset and really realize that there is a value, but the value couldn't get so fast. So how are you dealing with, because you were working with a lot of companies, with a lot of C people, so how are you dealing with it?
Oh, that's a great question and a really difficult one to answer. So there's a lot of different approaches, right? When you're trying to bring in something new or innovative, especially to an executive level. I had a CMO that I used to work for, and every time I'd go in to present to her, she'd start off the meeting and say, remember, I got a C in stats. Okay, so make it easy for me. And I think that's a good message, is trying to net it out and make it very easy for that executive. And honestly, to the point that I would practice speaking to a 10-year-old. To be honest with you, I really do. I practice talking with a 10-year-old about what it is I do and what is the case of it before going to that executive, because it helps you with the language so that you can kind of net it down to a very basic level and find analogies so that it becomes relatable. Because honestly, the hardest part about analytics, especially when you're doing anything data science, is to make it so that someone can understand it that is not as technical as you and is willing to take a chance and trust you and will actually implement it, right? Because you can build the coolest thing, but if nobody uses it, it does nothing for you. So, but there's a lot of other things, like I've had professors get hired in to teach classes to the various folks, so that they would, and to validate the analysis that was coming out. That went over really well. Finding somebody that executive trusts, and also finding and telling them about what you've done and getting them to sit in the room with the executive and nod can do, help smooth that process along.
It's a Bayesian process somehow. The more they have signals.
Yes, it's totally true.
So sometimes I really feel this is like you're a CIA agent. You have to understand who is influences that person, and then you have to act on it.
Too true. I've heard the analogy of trying to get a law passed, right? Yeah. So, sometimes it's an imperfect law. Sometimes the analysis is imperfect. But in order to just get it into place, you take in some of that imperfection, just so people will try it, right?
Where do you work,
I can never compare.
Have you ever thought about it to test your model not in the enterprise but on the stock market?
Have I thought about testing it on the stock market? I actually have an acquaintance that does data science work for stock prices. So I haven't thought about testing this model in terms of that. One of the times that we did this, we put stock price in to the model. Not something I would do again if I had the choice, because the data is just influenced by too many other factors. Yeah, there is some data science being done in that area, and I can help connect you, but it's not something that I have worked on. So, there is a lot of effort. Honestly, with this investment optimization model, the biggest struggle that I have had in implementing this is the data. Because if you look at it, it's such a strategic model, and you have to gather data in from all these different groups. And it tends to be data that sometimes those organizations are a little protective about. So that can be problematic. But in the world where we're becoming, business intelligence dashboards for executives are becoming very regular, I'm getting a lot more requests for this. So, there's that. But the biggest challenge is not actually the modeling approach, it's the adoption and the data, I would actually say. Yeah, go ahead.
So as the models and the sophistication level of the industry and executives becomes higher, how do, especially executives, make sure that the fact that the individual elements, the sales, the marketing, the product, know that they're going to be used in a holistic model? How do the executives make sure that that knowledge doesn't influence the lower level models that feed into the larger optimization?
Wow, I don't know if I can address that right on. I will say this. At the time that I did this for one of the clients that I did it for, we still had a marketing specific model that I was also responsible for. And I had to deal with two different results that didn't always agree. And trying to create a story around that to help the executives understand it, because even though it was two different models that had different data, they still wanted one answer, if that makes sense. So I definitely think that's a struggle. And I think what's going to happen, honestly, in the industry is you're going to see more like chief analytics officers that are going to have to be sitting at that kind of executive level and helping advise and helping the executives understand that. Without that, you're going to end up with the battle of the analyst, I like to call it. So where the sales analyst comes in and the marketing analyst comes in and the product analyst comes in, and they're all saying different things and trying to kind of discredit each other's modeling. So I don't know if I completely answered the question, but that's what I've seen. Are there any other questions? Yeah, sure.
Coming back to the stock market, can you predict the quarterly earnings of firms?
Oh, how interesting. Okay. See, this is where you're going with the stock market stuff. I wish my colleague was here, because I would love to see the answer on this one. So so let me address it this way. The one time I put stock price in, I actually put stock price in for a model, and we used it as a brand measurement. So we put it in. Do you guys know Net Promoter Score? Is that something that's done here in Germany? You guys are pretty familiar with Net Promoter Score. So put it into a model with like things like Net Promoter Score and other brand variables. If you're not familiar with Net Promoter Score, it's basically a survey that you have different consumers do that kind of ranks you in terms of how well you've done from a customer service perspective. But a lot of companies use it as kind of a brand measurement. The problem with stock prices is there's just so many factors that go into that.
Yeah.
It becomes very hard to predict.
No. My question is, if you can predict the revenue, then you can probably also predict the earnings. And if there is a new earnings announcement when the company is releasing the quarterly reports, then it has to affect the price. So if you are predicting the revenue, the earnings should also be positive.
That's fair. That's fair. I will. The way the model has been used has not been from a perspective of let me forecast what the revenue is going to be next year, as much as it's been where can I get the best bang for my buck? You know, where can I get the best return from a dollar perspective? So when you're trying to be exact in terms of forecasting, the modeling approach that I've done here is not the one I would recommend. When you're trying to say, okay, strategically, where should I do the next investment? Or for one company that was looking to try and cut their costs significantly, where should I cut my costs from? This would be more the modeling approach I would use. And I've had this more from a marketing specific question rather than an investment optimization question, but if the question is forecast for me what the revenue would be, there's other models I would do for that. And I would depend upon that. So if I was within a company and being asked that question, I would have two separate models. This would be one that would be strategic and the other which would be much more forecasting, right?
Yeah. I think we have more questions, but you will stay here till
I
the end,
will.
right?
Can I say one last thing? I just want everybody to know, because I'm coming back to Germany, and I have just been asked to do a full training class on marketing attribution and omnichannel. And if you have any interest in that and would like to come down to Munich to see that, please do so. They're offering a 15% discount for folks that know me, and I'm happy to talk more about it. I really didn't talk at all about marketing attribution today. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I will stick around.